Hey Warren, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon, Roy. Welcome to all of our viewers out there today. This is episode 5, Roy.
Episode number 6.
Oh, it's 6. Oh boy. Another time, another place. After all these years, I still don't know the production order.
That's all good. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for our 6th episode. We're happy to have you out there.
For sure, for sure. And Roy, do you have the synopsis?
Yeah, in fact I do. An eerie phenomena grips the moon. Moonbase Alpha personnel become duplicated and come face to face with their future selves on Earth again. But for how long? Ooh.
Wow, you should really be doing some voiceover work there.
I don't know about that, but I'm actually having fun doing this though, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, we all are. This is great. This is great. So let's watch a few clips from the episode. This has been put together by our friend Catherine Brugeau.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you, Catherine. You know what? I don't want to do this podcast right now. You know what? I'm going to go watch Another Time, Another Place after watching that. If that doesn't rope you in, nothing's going to. Holy mackerel. That was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, she really has a gift when it comes to timing and editing with the music and creating building tension. Yeah, everything fantastic.
Thank you, Catherine.
Listen, yes, thanks again. Today, a very special welcome to Mr. Kit Bevan joining us from the UK to discuss this fan favorite and personal favorite episode of mine. One of the things that a lot of people have said down through the years is that a lot of the year one episodes were so theatrically shot, and the feeling, the tone, the vibe. This is a prime example. And if you can have the opportunity to watch this episode in a widescreen format, where you're clipping the top and bottom just to give it a little more of that theatrical feel, it's a beautifully shot episode. And that's just to begin with. But fellas, thanks for your time today. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us do this.
Yeah, nice to be here.
And Kit, great to see you. It's been a while.
Thank you.
So awesome that we can connect this way. Great.
Yeah, good to see you since the convention. Yes.
Yeah.
You bet. This is one of your favorites as well, Kit?
It's probably is my favorite, actually.
Okay.
It's always been up there, quite high up, but yeah, it's my favorite, I think, for sure. Yeah,
there is a lot to unpack and unravel. It's just there's so many different aspects that we'll get into here shortly. But yeah, it is a beautiful package all around, and it's like the perfect, perfectly wrapped gift with the bow in every way, shape, and form. In my mind, it's a very special episode.
I agreed. I mean, I think it's probably not an episode I would show as if someone doesn't know space, I wouldn't perhaps show them this episode as the best episode of this show. I think it needs the context of Breakaway and Other Adventures, but it is, I think, it epitomizes everything that's great about year one, sure.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's almost like you have to have a bit of the backstory, everything, a few episodes established, and we are going in production order. So this was the 6th episode that was filmed, and really with the way the story develops and it progresses throughout the episode, it really comes through with everything. Yeah, there's a beautiful shot. And what I love about this too is they did this with filters, but also I love the way that they actually have that effect taking place outside on the lunar surface as well. It just really was done very, very well.
It's a great shot. It's like it's an in-camera shot, and that opening piece before the credits. It's the colored lights and the slow motion. It's very effective.
And what's done very well too is that when the episode starts in the teaser, which this was a part of, everything is just peaceful. They're just kind of going about their normal business, having conversation, working a main mission, and then it's like everything just starts to unravel. Where this phenomena just comes out of nowhere. They had no inkling about it whatsoever, but when it hits, it really hits hard, and it draws them in as it draws us in as a viewer.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, I just thought of something looking at these photos, guys, and the way um, you can clearly see that they were lighting from the exterior of the set. And
Exactly.
that's and so any reflections, off the actors themselves, as opposed to I'm thinking of Space Brain, where they actually towards the end and there's a bunch of colored lights, but I think they did that inside the set. You could see it on the walls, and it's not as effective as the way they did this here with the external lighting.
Yeah, definitely.
Adds to all the eeriness, that feel, as you were saying, Roy. I mean, really, it's so effective.
For sure, and a nod again to I brought this up. There's just so many examples in year one where the sound design is just like stellar, and that sequence alone with the spatial sounds and sound effects. It just, like you said, Kit. It just adds to the overall effect and the illusion of something weird and eerie transpiring.
Yeah, and this episode was directed by David Tomlin, and one of my favorite directors for Space 1999. As we did later on, I believe it's episode number 9. He did Force of Life, and such just with visuals. I mean, everything comes through. You can tell the story with the visuals, and just in that teaser alone, which we'll talk about it, in several weeks ahead. But again, here it's done the same way, where it's just having things set up a certain way with the different shots. It's just, you can really, sometimes you don't need dialogue. Dialogue is wonderful, but it's the creative and artistic approach that really can draw you in sometimes. And it's really done very, very well, especially in this episode.
We talked about that this week, Roy, with the new Star Trek Unification trailer. Look at what they were able to portray without a single line of dialogue, just again by music, by performances, and editing. It's really remarkable. And yeah, this opening does all of those things.
Yeah, it really, really does. One of the things too, just to point out, which when everything is taking place too, and right, they're trying to get to where they were trying to go, and then Regina Kesslin, who's portrayed by Judy Geeson, is on her way to go up to the balcony, and then she never quite makes it up there, and then everybody's kind of being thrown about, and once they kind of pick themselves up, and then they see on the big screen that the phenomena is actually coming at them, there's this like moment where they're all pretty much held in this, I don't know, it's almost like they're taking it all in. It's almost like they're frozen as they're absorbing the moment. And what's interesting though is Dr. Russell appears to be the only one, at least with the exception of Regina, that is actually in motion and is taking place and seeing what's actually happening. And it kind of made me think just for a moment, was from a creative standpoint that, and maybe even artistic standpoint, was she close to being maybe like what happened to Regina? It could have been, because Regina, as we know, once they stop and the moons start to separate, their essence, their other selves, quote unquote, go with the other moon. And it happens with Dr. Russell as well. I mean, she separates, but with Regina, she doesn't. It's almost like she's held together. And then later on, we find out that there's the two brains, but we also find out too that she was in another time in another place on that alternate moon as well too. But it's like the split did not occur the way it did with everybody else, and it affected her. And then we know the outcome of what happens with her. But interesting enough, the same thing happens with Dr. Russell later too, when she confronts herself. Only it's not Helena of our time that loses her life. It's the Helena of another time, another place that sort of, that loses her life. So just something to think about. One of the things I kind of picked up on.
I think there's also, to your point, as the moon is splitting in two, and the characters are seen as splitting, except for Regina. It's Dr. Russell that turns and looks and seems to see the second moon going off into the distance.
Yeah,
I seem to have a memory of it, but it's just very effective. And then of course we get the amazing title music coming in.
Yeah, excellent point, Kit. Yeah, and that sets the pace. I mean, what an opening. I mean, it's minimal dialogue, the incredible visuals, and then boom, it's just like, now what's happening? And we get this episode and we see the previews, and then we go right into it where they're basically recovering themselves from what had transpired. But what an opening, and what a great way, a powerful way to start off a new episode.
Yeah, 100%. I never really thought of that, but it does tend to make a lot of sense with both Regina and Dr. Russell. And Roy, as you were saying, it's almost like everybody else was mesmerized by what they were seeing on the screen, right? But Helena, was maybe sort of in that mid ground, whereas Regina was clearly right, affected a different way. Helena was sort of walking the line both ways,
right?
But it's also interesting because it ties into the end of the episode where she's the one to go down with the landing party after telling John that because John and Alan have died in the other universe, right? They're basically, they should be going, but she's also coming along.
Right. Their other selves are dead, and and then she says to him, like, I have to go. Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of foreshadowing in this episode as to what comes up, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. No, it was again, I mean, how can you top that opening? Number one, like you guys were both discussing, but it's just so many moments throughout the episode. Again, we'll go along the entire time. Just a funny side note. A lot of people have said to me that have watched the series later and upon repeated viewings, that the ADR work in this with a lot of the dialogue with Koenig in particular seems a little off. It's almost like Martin Landau had a cold or something in these early scenes. If you go back and listen, it's like he's constantly whispering for some reason. He's just got this, I don't know, his voice is a little off, and it doesn't have the deep baritone bravado that Martin Landau is sort of known for. So I'm not sure if that was something in the ADR process or something, but just a little observation. That's all.
That shot you just showed is I like that scene. Helena's describing that Regina seems to have sunburn, and between the three characters, I mean, it's not just a sort of information dump or exposition. They're trying to understand what's happened, but they don't. And I think, again, year one is really good at these mysteries that they're talking about and trying to come to terms with. The dialogue is actually really good.
Is this at the point that she's saying that? I think she was saying that if she identifies that if Regina was dealing with I think she used the term classic regression.
Right.
She could really understand it, but that's not what seems to be the issue. And
deeper than that.
Yeah.
And again, Kit, the foreshadowing that you mentioned, right, with the sunburn, and as the viewer, you're like, what?
Right.
It's, but then it pays off in the end, of course.
Yeah.
Seeing their final fate, as it were.
Yeah, they're really just trying to put all the pieces together, because really they went through that, and then it's almost like, now what's happening? And then the other thing that's a bit of foreshadowing too is Koenig says to Bergman, right after this all took place, he said, basically, what the heck just happened? And Bergman says, he doesn't know, but he said that their position has changed in space, and he goes, we're not where we should be. And that kind of sets the tone is exactly of what's going to transpire too, because it's like, why would they have been shifted? What happened with all of this? And then shortly after that, when they're trying to identify what has happened to Regina, then they find out they're coming up on another solar system, and they don't know what the solar system is, but they know that it's out there and they're approaching it. And then that's where the big reveal comes up, shortly after that.
And then we get that reveal, and then we get other reveals as the episode goes along. It's like the mystery deepens. Yeah, so Regina's recovering in medical center, and she's painting again, another foreshadowing, for at least for us, of the settlement on the future Earth.
Right, and she makes the reference to Helena that was wondering about that, or was being glad that they're not dead, and that wondering why her husband hasn't seen her. And then that's when it comes to be that she's saying that she's married to Alan, and then Helena asks Alan Carter to come to medical center. Now, before that comes into play, Alan is talking to Koenig, and we get to see Alan Carter again. In the first season, he seemed a little bit more ill-tempered. He would get upset, quickly, always, wanted to, hurry up with things, and let's not wait. Let's not, mess around. Nick Tate has also talked about how, I guess, even his accent, you could see how it's a lot thicker in the first season of Space 1999. He has more of the Australian brogue coming out, more so than he does in the second season of 1999. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think he was said that, they told him to do that. And this is very evident when he's having the discussion about when they discover that Earth is out there, and that they're getting closer to Earth and they're on course to Earth. But Alan wants to, again, Alan being the explorer, being the astronaut, he wants to get out there, and he doesn't want to wait. And he's pretty much pressuring Koenig for them to go. But Koenig is trying to be the force of reason, saying that for some reason, if they don't go into orbit, then he could be lost, and then that's going to be it. And that's at that point when Alan is called to see Helena, and it ties into the photo that you just put up, Warren, in regards to artwork that Regina, there's a painting that she's been working on, and then that's when Helena explains to Alan that this is the world that Regina is referencing, and then that's when we get to see that.
This is her world. Yes.
So, very cool. Look at that.
That's actually painted by Bob Wood for me.
Wow.
But it's yeah, there we go. This is her world. So
it's beautiful.
It's usually in my living room, but I just brought it up for this.
Thanks for sharing. Incredible artwork by Bob Wood.
Shout out to Bob. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You just jogged my memory, because he was supposed to do one for me too about 12 years ago. So I'm going to have to remind him.
Was he supposed to do that in another time and in another place, Warren?
and well, that would have been Burbank, because he donated one of those to the Burbank art auction. I remember, and that's when I first talked to him about it.
I think I remember that, seeing that at that convention. Yeah. Wow.
This would be a gentle reminder for him. So.
As he's watching this podcast, which we know that he watches every week.
Yeah, no getting out of that one, boy. Hey, listen, I was just thinking that scene, right before Alan gets called to medical by Helena. He's in that meeting with Koenig, and he is sort of the brash pilot that we've gotten to know. But it's interesting that from the next scene forward, Alan does seem to sort of soften and mellow a little bit throughout the rest of the season, and maybe this is why this experience of the reality setting in of different possibilities throughout your life gives you different pause and reason to reconsider things and things like that.
I'm going to jump in there, Warren. You're saying you're saying that he mellows throughout the season from after this episode.
Well, a little bit.
I'm gonna disagree with you on that. And I'll give you an example.
Depends on which order you watch them in.
Yeah, because the next episode is the missing link, and let me say this. I mean, we'll talk about that next week, and I'll even reference this conversation. He doesn't mellow out in the missing link at all. If anything, he gets a little bit ill-tempered because and he shows his loyalty to Koenig, and we'll talk about that next week. But I think, and then obviously, then there's the Guardian of Puri after that, and we'll come back to that.
Maybe it mellows him out for the remainder of the episode for sure.
For the remainder of the episode, I would agree. But when you said the series, I had to hit the red alert on that. Sorry.
But Missing Link was shot before this, Roy. Come on.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know what episode guide you're looking at. And I can put Kit on the hot seat. Who do you agree with, Kit?
Well, I do have a different perspective because although this was the 6th episode filmed, for me in 1975, actually 76, it was the last episode shown in London.
Wow.
So it was the 24th episode of 24. So my perspective back then was, they've come back to this future Earth. This is the end of the series. Now, obviously, we know more now. We know more that there's a very subtle development of the characters. But for me, it was the final episode. So my perspective on it is slightly different. But Carter is, at times throughout the series, hot-headed, and at times, it's a very nice side we see of him. Having spoke to Nick at the convention in Heathrow, thank you guys for arranging that amazing convention. But I got him to sign a still from Another Time, Another Place, and he said, "Why did I choose it?" And I said, "Well, this is my favorite episode." And he said it was his as well. I mean, he could be saying that to everyone, but I think actors tend to like things that they are more involved in, have more to do. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Even back to Burbank, because Judy Geeson was the guest there, Roy, and you remember the two of them up on stage reminiscing about the episode and the wonderful moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I thought it would. Well, we'll touch upon it shortly, but ultimately what happens to Regina, he's very sentimental with her, because Dr. Russell is going to pretty much arrange to have her taken from main mission, and then he's like, "No, leave her," and then he picks her up and he carries her. He has that connection with her. So no, there's definitely a softening of him that takes place, and I'm finding that's very interesting that this was the last episode, though.
Well, and we've discussed this, is that depending on how you see them, it gives you, depending on how you first see them, it gives different perspective, right? Because we're all at different points in our lives back 50 years ago, I've said all along with each episode that we've done, Roy, that one in particular that I said, for me, plays better viewing it later on as Black Sun. And this one, Another Time, Another Place, I also agree that if you watch it later on in the series, it has a little more impact and emotional beats to it that resonate a little differently if you watch it later on.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it really. Fortunately, like the Testament of Arcadia was the last episode when it was shown in New York City. So that was the last episode filmed, which to me just seems appropriate. But then I've heard some people have seen The Last Enemy as being the last episode, and I can't wrap my head around that. But it is what it is. But that's.
But you're right. I'd never heard that before, Kit. That this was the last one shown in London. That's very
London, in London. Testament of Arcadia does make a good last episode for sure. Come back finding the origins of mankind. But it's just the way that they showed it in London. So
yeah. Well, it's like I said to Warren, Kit, Dragon's Domain was the second episode shown right after Breakaway in New York. And to me, that almost makes sense in the sense that it's going back to 1996 with, with the failed Earth probe and, with the failed probe mission to go to the planet Ultra. But it almost makes sense, too, when you think about the fact that Dr. Russell is doing almost like a narration throughout the episode. And here it was the second to last episode shot. And then Koenig is doing the narration for the final episode that's shot. So in terms of that, but to me, it holds in my mind, just kind of like how this episode holds with you being the final episode. Dragon's Domain has always been like the second episode for me. So it really, to your point, Warren, it really does depend upon when you watch these episodes, specifically back 50 years ago, because I think that just has a strong place, in our minds that we kind of cling to.
Yeah, no, for sure. Listen, the other thing, guys, we've talked about all the variety of wonderful special guests, and this episode's no exception. Judy Geeson, we've already mentioned her, just did just a remarkable job with her character, and especially considering, she's really only in half the episode, if that. But she just was able to again emote so much through those few lines of dialogue, and even her reaction we talked about when Alan comes to medical, right? And it's very heartfelt and very, very sincere, and just a remarkable actress all around.
Yeah, she's done a lot of stuff.
And again, the foreshadowing in this sequence here, where she's seeing herself, the duplication that hasn't worked. She also sees herself in a robe like the future Alphans that we see, and a skull. She sort of foresees her death. But yeah, it's a wonderful performance, as you say. Full of tragedy and fragility. And I think because again, one of the strengths I think of year one is the how understated the main characters are. I think it's an acting choice that was often misunderstood by critics. It's a very realistic and credible way of how do you act these fantastical things happening to you. But we do get the histrionics. We get them here with Regina because of what's happening to her. So yeah, she does a great job.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And even what you were referencing about how the series was received, back in the day, and we kind of all look at it, and of course it's maybe a case of rose-colored glasses for all of us because we've been so passionate and involved all our lives. But I mean, I think you are accurate in saying, Kit, that there was a lot of negativity thrown towards this series because it was so different and people just hadn't seen anything like it before, from many different levels, visually, story-wise, pacing, acting, everything was it was so big and grandiose on so many levels, as we all know, and so much money was thrown at it that there was all these different aspects and elements that were they were, and as we know from these early episodes, they were really in many cases flying by the seat of their pants from a production standpoint, and writing and story and things like that. Things were very last minute in some cases, and some things worked, some didn't, but I mean overall, I mean it was the final product. Well, and here's the interesting thing in going through discovering a lot of the documentation from Martin Landau in the last couple of years, and I remember the one, there was a critique that Johnny Byrne did of series one going into series two, and just interestingly enough, the one that we can talk about it in a couple of weeks, of course, but he was very critical of Guardian of Piri and the look of it, and the Piri planet set, and he said that he felt that looking back on it, so this would have been between year one and year two, that they'd maybe taken that one step too far and that it didn't work. But strangely enough, all these years later, Piri is one of the episodes that's really known for its unique visual style and design work of Keats, and that's one of the things that's so memorable.
You know, it's interesting you're saying that, and I've heard this mentioned several times too, because this has come up in discussion. You know, Guardian of Pre, I would say, and now granted, I was, dating myself here, but when I first started watching Space 1999, I was 9 years old, and that was in '75. But that was one of my favorite episodes. I mean, the uniqueness, the outworldiness of that planet, it just stood out. I mean, and it worked. It worked even for the context of the story. It drove you in, and it I and this is it's interesting too, because we do have these, we've done, this is our sixth episode, and we've had this discussion a couple of times before, and we'll probably continue to have these discussions as we move on, and through year one, and then eventually we'll get to year two. It's just a shame that Space 1999 was not allowed to develop as it did in the first series, and have a second series with the same type of format, the same type of style, the same type of stories, and putting behind all the reasons, and the studio, and what the US wanted, just kind of just like putting that on the shelf for a moment. If it really had the opportunity to really just be its own entity in that sense, and not try to appease a certain type of audience that was thought was going to appreciate it, I think it really would have taken off. I mean, if you look back at a lot of other shows, every show that is made, I mean, needs time to grow and develop. It just happens. It's just part of the process. And it's just unfortunate that the timing with this show just didn't coincide with allowing it to have that shot. And again, there's a lot of reasons that are said that it was not allowed, and whatever for that. But I think, if, let's say, the budget was not a problem, and you know studio input was not a problem, I think really we've got these 24 beautiful episodes from the first series. And again, not taken away from the second series, I have my favorites from the second series, but it's just a shame that there couldn't have been another 24 episodes that could have been developed for a second series that would have followed these original 24, and I've been allowed to sort of prosper and grow and have that type of identity as the show had defined itself with the first 24. That's, just my take.
Yeah, it is a shame that they had this sharp turn left for, and we know more now. I mean, the space of all TV shows, like many others, though, had a very difficult genesis, and with the casting and the scripts being late. But as a 14-year-old watching it in 1975, to me, this was a perfect series, a serious science fiction show, a science fiction horror show, actually,
Yeah.
in many ways. And so whatever serendipity, but also talent, the alchemy produced these wonderful 24 episodes. So I certainly see year two as a sort of as a different show, almost a different timeline. I've got my own head canon about that. So
That's very interesting. We might have to have you back. We're planning a bridge episode between the two seasons, Kit, and that's one of the things I wanted to sort of explore, is the possibility of year two being, in a completely different universe. And there's various points where you could see it branching off, things like that. But ultimately, it's what you guys are saying, that absolutely true. But it's just unfortunate that I mean, we all realize that science fiction is a very expensive, risky proposition, and that's maybe why so many shows from back in the 70s did take that right turn, right? So not only space, but when you look at things like Buck Rogers, when you look at things like Galactica turning into Galactica 1980,
Oh,
I mean,
don't even
there
say it.
was all these examples where the first season, there were lots of nuggets in there, but it didn't quite gel fully, and so the creative decision was made to go in a different direction. And it's really too bad, because you know what, if, say for example, if, like you guys are saying, if there would have been another 24 episodes based around year one before that change, the other thing that would have happened is that Star Wars would have came out, and then potentially a third season, if they were to go in any direction at all, would be maybe more geared towards, like, I'm thinking Star Wars versus something like the Dorcons, where it's a little more action oriented and exciting and intense in that level. Who's to say, though? A number of what ifs here, right?
Yeah, there's
And
definitely a lot
I
of.
think it was Martin Landau that said that the first year was ahead of its time, and the second year was a product of its time.
Hmm.
So
Yes,
I think that's a very sharp difference, and I think we have to love what we've got, certainly.
Yeah, that's very well said. And it's true. It really, really is true.
no, for sure. Well, listen, let's take a couple of minutes, Kit, and just maybe, if you don't mind, tell the viewers out there about yourself and your affiliation and association with all things Space 1999 over the years, your involvement in various fandoms, things like that, conventions.
Who wants to hear about that?
Oh, come on.
The fans do. We do. Definitely.
And my geek credentials, I'm just a fan. I was born just outside London. Anderson shows were very popular in my house. Grew up with them. Doctor Who as well, in particular. But after seeing things like The Prisoner and 2001. I was really ready for something like Space 1999. It was, I think I may have said I was 14 years old when it was on. I was just the right age. I mean, UFO was great. Really like UFO. And in fact, my hometown it was filmed in my hometown.
Wow.
Actually, anyway, so Harlington Straker Film Studios. I used to be able to see it, and I just imagine all sorts of things. But I think they're just about to knock it down, apparently. So that's unfortunate, but really ready for the show, and nothing has bettered it as far as I'm concerned. So it's why we're still talking about space 50 years later. It has something that resonates with us, and it was one of the first shows that, for me, although UFO, for example, had a very sort of a downbeat feel to it, but space has a sort of more melancholy feel to it. So, which is something I really appreciated and resonated with. So, fast forward, I haven't been someone who's been terribly involved in fandom too much, but I was a member of various clubs, and I haven't written any books or done anything like that. But I'm just, I know some people just love the Eagles, which is fine. Like, I sort of had this rather rude sort of expression, it's eagle whores. But we're all a bit like that anyway. I mean, what is space without the Eagles? But for me, it's the whole show. There's nothing trivial about that first year. And so fandom, well, I suppose it was something I appreciated on my own for a long time. And then about 25 years ago, I first started building all this sort of nonsense with a friend of mine called, shout out to David McLaughlin. So that was just something that I wanted to do. And we started building. So we built a chunk of things. This is actually a new version of this computer wall. I don't know if you can see. There's more of it here. So I upgraded it recently because back 25 years ago we had didn't have so much reference material. So I felt I wanted to upgrade it, and ever since 1975 I wanted a piece of alpha to look at or be like I was on Moonbase.
We all did.
Yeah, sure. You get it right. So that was the impetus behind it, and we did exhibit a few things, David and I. I was telling Roy earlier, I've got a communication post in the corner that we built So it's been, I suppose the big convention was in 1999, where obviously meeting most of the main actors from the show. And then there's been lots of smaller conventions. I haven't been able to go to that many, but then this wonderful convention just in Heathrow just in September. So I would say for me, I watch an episode a week. You know, it doesn't go away. So it's that those are my fan credentials.
Well, and listen, and yeah, so we were going to talk about the wonderful panels behind you, Kit, but could you maybe just explain to everybody your involvement in the famous Message from Moonbase Alpha?
Oh, right. So David and I were building computer panels like these ones, and someone from Kindred approached us to say that they wanted to make this little film with Xenia Merton, and came to have a look at the computer wall that was up in this room to see if they could use it as a backdrop. So we didn't build it for that, but so that was agreed. So it was shipped to the house of a friend of mine, Andrew, and the filming. The piece was written by Johnny Byrne and filmed in, I think, the August bank holiday of 1999. So it was very quickly together from that point of view. And so David and I were there to assemble the computer wall. In fact, that computer wall was in pieces over in the far corner because, as I say, I've upgraded it. So that was our involvement. That day we got to meet, that weekend we got to meet Xenia, and became friends with her for many years. And actually, several people that I'd met for the first time that weekend been some of the best friends I've ever had. Shout out to Martin and Maxine there. So that piece, Message from Moonbase, was shown at the Breakaway convention. It was supposed to be a sort of kind of almost a goodbye to the show, but it's weird because we hadn't seen it cut together. The first time we saw it was in that convention hall, and there really wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was quite a thing. So, yeah.
Well, it's pretty remarkable, and so it was, of course, done very quickly, but also on somewhat of a smaller budget. But the end result, it did what it needed to do, and it was very, very fondly remembered all these years later. A lot of people consider it to be the 49th episode, and I'm just going to take 30 seconds to dovetail that into there's more coming. We did a special trailer that we showed in London back in September, and there will be a follow-up to that. There was lots of things that Message planted, different seeds of possibilities where the story could go, and we've sort of come full circle now that it's 25 years beyond that, of course, for the 50th anniversary. And so we are going to pick up on that, and there'll be something fun and exciting yet to see in the coming months, and maybe it'll be considered episode number 50. You never know, for the 50th anniversary. We'll see.
To go back to real quick, Kit, I was actually at the Breakaway 1999 convention in Los Angeles, and it was an amazing experience. And that last day when that was shown, to your point, there were no dry eyes. I mean, it really hit an emotional chord. And Johnny Byrne, I mean, Johnny Burns was responsible for the screenplay of Another Time, Another Place that we're discussing today too, as well. So there's that.
Yeah.
So it was.
Xenia was wonderful, wasn't she?
Yeah, she just a beautiful soul, and she's very, very much missed. And I was fortunate to meet her then, and then also in 2000. We were hoping maybe in 14 she would have been, maybe was going to be able to come, but it didn't work out for that. But yeah, no. So that's like you said, you've had established friends that have been very close friends of yours since that, and that's another great aspect of Space 1999. I find myself in the same situation. I mean, Warren, I've been friends with since over the last 12 years. We've become very, very good friends. And other folks.
I'm really sorry, Roy. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, like Lou Place, I always drop Lou's name. I've known Lou since '87. I mean, I think it's just crazy. But again, it's for a show that only lasted 2 years, but really lasted 50 years because we're still talking about it and we're here. So it may have been only 48 episodes that were filmed over a 2-year period, but the show itself has lasted over 50 years.
Yeah, we're still banging on about it. Yeah,
exactly. Actually, 51 years this month, right around now. They started shooting Breakaway. At least they were in the, which is crazy. It's like 51 years. What? But yeah, so no, thank you for sharing all that with us. And your work is amazing. So
Yes.
Again, incredible.
Shout out to the time and passion and dedication to a project like that, along with Daryl Simmons, who brought the Eagle to London. I mean, it's the same level of detail and accuracy. It is stunning to see in person. So yeah.
Well, Daryl, shout out to him. I think that's my answer phone going. I was very happy to be part of just a small part of the Eagle 6 crew. So that's been great fun. It's been really good getting to know Daryl and swapping ideas. And
such a good guy.
Yeah, that Eagle 6 cockpit was amazing. Yeah.
It was a literal dream come true for so many people, and just again, I mean, he took that project on, without any expectation, without the need to have a lot of fanfare around it, but he just did it for the fans, really, and the wonderful. He knew that it would touch so many people, and which of course it did, and for as much as message, right, struck a chord, sitting in that Eagle for all of us again, and like you said, Kit, about being an Eagle whore on a certain level. I mean, we all kind of were, but then to actually be there inside that physical set was just truly remarkable, indescribable.
Well, we had a great evening, didn't we, when we had our playtime, which we discussed with Daryl, and we said that once the doors were shut, then on went the spacesuits, and I remember we were having such a laugh, weren't we? Throwing out lines to each other as well from the show. We really said, so you get it. It was a lot of fun.
I had so much fun quoting War Games, and I was like throwing the lines to Warren.
Listen, and you guys, boy, I mean, hats off, because the way you could pull dialogue just from left field on a moment's notice is truly remarkable. The two of you should go head to head against, or in a trivia contest of some kind, because wow.
My money's on Kit.
No. I don't know, Roy. But no, listen, to circle back to another time, another place here real quick, it's sort of, and we've said this as well in regards to a lot of episodes up to this point, but you could also easily apply the fact that this would have made a remarkable 2-part episode as well.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of in the middle of the episode, it sort of, we touched on Regina's dream sequence, but then it's sort of, there's a midsection of the episode which I just love, and that's when they actually travel back or over to the other moon, and they there's all these eerie shots of the empty moon base Alpha and the crashed Eagle, and again the slight little sound effect that's playing in the background, just remarkable sequence.
It is wonderful. It's one of the reveals that their Earth orbit's confirmed, and seems we found another moon. So they Alan and Koenig go down to visit the moon base, and it's obviously in slow motion because of the 1/6 gravity, but it all adds to the mystery and eeriness of it. And I think I'm right. The Barry Gray's soundtrack is just wonderful throughout. The way it repeats the theme throughout. But the piece that plays along with this is it I know it's from the Doctor Who and the Daleks film, The Dalek Invasion Earth in 1966. So it makes me think of the Dalek saucer but it's a stunning, eerie. It's sort of it's so strange, the episode, and when they come across their own dead bodies. I mean, again, how do you play that as actors? You'll see there's lots of low angle shots as well that Tomlin did as they're walking into the empty moon base, but also when they're on Eagle 6, actually, very close up shots, very claustrophobic.
I love the way they went through the corridor of the, like the compartment of the Eagle, because that's something that they really did not do very often. Yeah. And of course, and then the door opens and then you see all the grains coming down because it's from the crash, and they're just like seeing themselves, and it explains what was going on with Regina, why she was feeling what she was feeling about the remorse for Koenig and also Carter, more so Carter because it was her husband at that point. And then it's revealed that this had taken place 5 years ago with the crash. Now, what was interesting is, and I'm being super nitpicky here, but one of the things that happens is, which was very which was cool the way they did it. Koenig finds Carter's self, and then Carter finds Koenig. The one thing that they did though is, and they did it for, I think, the artistic or the dramatic, you don't know who's in the actual seat, and then they do the close up. Usually the name is above the visor when you can see it, but for the purposes of this, it's revealed. It's actually, if you look, it's actually at a lower point where it says Koenig and Carter. I don't know. Did you guys pick up on that at all? Or
yes, yeah.
Well, of course, and I think, I mean, I'm no expert on cinematography, but I believe it was done, like you said, Roy, just for that dramatic impact.
It was
with the close up, right. But I'm going to play devil's advocate and say that, well, all of this was an alternate universe.
There you
Maybe
go.
they didn't.
There you go.
Maybe they all weren't done like that. We'll never know.
Another time, another place. But it works, and it works effectively. And
well, it does, and even I brought the photo up again, and just like you said, all the dust and the grains, and look at the spacesuits here. I mean, just everything, all the little details that were put into this episode to even in this sequence alone to relay the passage of time, right? And wow, just amazing.
A lot of detail. They didn't miss a beat. And even back at the medical center, when they have, I'll say, the corpses laid out on the table, the exam tables, they did a very nice split where Dr. Russell is seeing sees Carter. She puts the cover over, and then does the same thing with Koenig, but she takes that moment because she's really just absorbing, because this is John Koenig. This is who she's very, it's been established. The relationship is blossoming, and to see him laying there and he's dead. And then what happens is the camera pans, and then Koenig is coming through, and it was nice. It was a cool effect the way they did that, because it was their opportunity to have, the filming stop, but they did it, and it was like a smooth transition where Koenig is then coming through the door, and then he looks down, and then, he pretty much sees himself there. I mean, think about it, seeing yourself laying there, it's got to be jarring. And Martin Landau, I mean, again, he conveys it with doesn't say anything, but it's written all over his face. And, that shows you, another moment of the brilliance of his acting. He doesn't miss a beat.
Yeah, and Barbara Bain as well. The understatedness of it. How do you act this? I mean, it would be a different sort of show if people were freaking out the whole time. But these are professional people, but it's extraordinary circumstances. So it's quite a interesting scene, that autopsy scene. As you say, the cut, sort of everything's done in camera there rather than any other way. I mean, these days you can, have multiple duplicates, but I think it's I don't know, I prefer the old school way of it. It's certainly very atmospheric, the way that cut's done.
Yeah. What's the next photo that you have, Warren?
We're trying a different format here this week for everybody out there. So we're bringing up some photos to discuss throughout the episode, just as reference points. This is a very famous shot, of course, that to this day I see people questioning online. You know, when they finally land on the alternate Earth. This is an amazing cutaway shot, I think they would call it, Kit, right?
I don't know. I think what we do know is it's a sort of like a matte painting with
yes.
a photograph.
Yeah.
So there's the furthest pod away was on the set, but the front pod and the rest of the eagles are on matte glass, and the doubles for Koenig, Carter, and Helena are walking in sort of in between. But it just works. It's a stunning kind of image.
Well, it really helped to give a sense of size and scale to things on the series, right? I mean, everything about year one, from even the expansive main mission set, right, was sort of along that 2001 feel of being very big. These are not little miniatures, and I think this shot hammered that fact home to a lot of the viewers. This was amazing to see on a, even if it was on a 20-inch TV with 525 lines of resolution, it still made an impact.
Yeah, it definitely worked. And I think, because it really makes you feel like, they're outside the eagle, which is really, really cool.
This is them heading back into future time. One of those lovely lines that Barry Morse gets to say.
Yes, for sure. And then, of course, the entire sequence, leading up to them discovering the establishment, and we were going to talk a little bit. Here's a really nice shot of from Keith Wilson, some pre-production artwork, and again a testament to the creativity that went into every aspect of the design work here.
It's great how close they seem to be able to make what he designed from those paintings. You look at some of the other things, the interior of Gwent, or the surface of Terra Nova, the paintings.
And Bob had that hanging behind him when we talked to him. Yeah, it's really, really remarkable how close they got. And I think there's one of Peary, of course. But this one's sort of interesting as well, because the huts themselves, there was obviously a lot of influence on actual geodesic dome structures, right?
Yeah.
Yes, so this is a synagogue, actually, and I think it's actually much larger than it might look. But if you compare it side by side, I think it's an inspiration for Keith Wilson's design. I didn't discover this, but it works.
Oh, it does for sure. And well, there's a great shot from the episode itself. Yeah, there's clear influences there.
And what another creepy scene! It's at nighttime, and they approach the settlements, and this is Carter trying to stop Helena from looking in the window because he knows what he's just seen himself.
Yeah.
I love that they had the tower there too. That was on from the moon base, off to the left.
Yes.
The anti-gravity tower.
I think I knew that, but you just reminded me. Yeah, just a nice little touch there, right?
Yeah. Now, one thing that's interesting is that in the original script, and it was changed, they find out that, I think Koenig finds that there is a satellite that's like buried in ash, and this ties into being where it's supposed to be taking place in Santa Maria. So they know then that this is in fact Earth. However, the scene was not, it was cut, and in the production script and what was actually filmed, when Koenig is talking to Bergman, he references, I think Bergman is referencing to Koenig, about there may have been another civilization here, like another Atlantis. I think he references. So it's almost like it wasn't them that were actually there, but now that they are there. So it's kind of, they decided to go into a different direction with that, which I thought was interesting.
Well, yeah, and I don't have one of the early scripts. We have talked quite a bit in depth about the changes in a lot of these early episodes, and a good example is actually right behind us here with that shot of the settlement that didn't make it into the final episode,
Right.
where you see a much larger dome structure and things like that.
Yeah, it's in this episode portion where you almost get to see these like settlements, but to your point, it's not in the finished product.
Yeah, wish it would have been. Then, of course, very famous sequence and just brilliantly performed by Barbara Bain. Again, using split screen.
Yeah, interesting enough too. When this was being conducted, it was Xenia that was off camera feeding Barbara Bain the response lines to her alternate Helena.
I remember Xenia telling me, I'm sure it's written somewhere as well, that I think Barbara had recorded lines for one of the Helenas, and Xenia was listening to it on headphones and feeding them back to Barbara Bain as she played the other Helena. And as a thank you for being there for doing it, Barbara gave Xenia a bracelet.
Oh,
nice.
But split screen, old in-camera techniques, but it's the eeriness again of it all.
Yeah,
it's extraordinary. The episode is dripping with the atmosphere.
You know what I just noticed? The chess set that was in
chessboard, Roy. I was just going to say the same thing. Is that the same one used in Dragon's Domain?
I'm thinking it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in there that you're seeing hexagonal boxes, the tables. There's even the paintings of planets and moons that you see in people's quarters are down. They took everything with them.
That's a nice touch.
My mind is blown. Yeah.
I never noticed that with the chess set. I just picked up on that.
Fantastic.
See, 50 years later, and we're still picking up new things.
Yep. That's why we're here, folks.
Yep.
To show you that chess set.
So yeah, great performance by Barbara Bain playing two Helenas.
Yeah, because you believe.
And now we're here in the same time. It's trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. You just brought up a good point. Trying to make sense of it all, trying to figure out what exactly transpired, what happened. Very similar kind of direction that happens in Force of Life that I was referencing earlier. The same thing. I mean, they go through this. They don't really know what it was, what happened. Bergman does tell them that, that they can't stay there because they kind of want to settle there. They want a new home. But he pretty much says, if you don't go back to the moon, you'll have no place to die. I mean, and how eerie is that? He said time is going to correct itself. And then they head back, and when all is said and done, they never know what transpired. They don't know if as Carter says, he wonders, did the others make it? Did they survive? And then it's like Koenig that says, did they ever really exist? And it's just the brilliance of not having to have an ending that essentially wraps everything up and says, okay, this was that, and this is what happened here. It's just that we don't know. It's the artistic, we can try to figure out, the three of us could have our own different interpretations of it, but that's what makes it wondrous and makes it appealing, and I think makes us wanting more, and part of the reason why we keep coming back to it, because it never gets old.
and I mentioned this last episode. It's the fact that so many stories in year one, you don't get all the answers,
No.
and it keeps you wondering and guessing all these years, right? And hence, yeah, we're here. We're still learning and discovering things. And to your point, Roy, I mean, the final shot then after that line, of course, is Helena holding the flowers,
Yep.
right? And so as the viewer, you're automatically uh, questioning whether or not this actually happened, whether how much of it was real.
Mhm.
One of the things that I liked about that whole final sequence, as the viewer again, was sort of similar to watching an episode like yesterday's Enterprise of Star Trek, where you see them. How their lives could have played out differently, and when you see them on the alternate Earth with suddenly now raising families and growing facial hair, things like that. It was so different and a different view and look at our beloved characters. I really enjoyed it from that aspect as well.
Yeah.
Yes, we see Sandra and Paul are together and have kids, and we know tragically that John and Helena were married.
Yeah.
But it's another sort of foreshadowing of what the future relationships have in store for them, but it isn't happening just yet. Again, incredibly spooky and beautifully played out. Yeah.
Yeah, by everybody and a lot of the supporting cast with Prentice and Clifton and Xenia all playing those alternate roles just brilliantly.
I think that when before they're leaving the Earth, the Carter and Koenig are still arguing that we need to stay. We've got no choice, and Helena's just seen herself kiss Koenig and then die. I mean, but as the other two are arguing to stay, you look at Barbara Bain's face. There's a resignation on it. She knows that they can't stay, and that's what she says. Take us back. Our
Yeah.
place and our time is on Alpha.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of there's a beauty to it. You mentioned earlier the critical analysis that Johnny Byrne wrote about Series 1 episodes, and what he wrote about this episode, I recall. I know Bob Wood managed to find that document in amongst Martin Landau's things, because it was thought to be lost. But weirdly, Johnny Byrne wrote that he thought Barry Morse's performance was lethargic,
Yeah.
which is I think he either forgot or had changed his view over the years. But no, it's a subtle performance, and he's got some sort of knowingness about what's going on. Is that a word? Knowingness. You will have nowhere to die. I mean, wow, line.
Yeah, well, and that's the other character that we see, and throughout the series, Barry Morse is always he was sort of that fatherly figure, right, to many of the characters and to their entire journey. But then it just everything in my mind sort of got amped up with his scenes on the alternate Earth. I mean, he was just sort of he was somewhat all knowing of things that maybe he shouldn't have been aware of.
Kind of mystical.
Yeah,
And I love while he's having this serious discussion with Koenig, and Koenig is really trying to figure it all out, and he's just going about his business, and he's cutting the plants, and he's just it's not disturbing him. It's not that he's not taking it to be important, but it's just that he's in his realm and he's stating the facts, and he's just letting him know what has transpired and what will transpire if they don't do certain things, and that being going back to the moon. It's all knowing and all wisdom right there, and it's very subtle, but it's I don't know. Barry Morse, he was so natural. You really, there isn't a moment in this show that you don't buy into him. I mean, he was I mean, again, I don't want to go in that direction, but what a loss. What a loss. And thinking again, just we'll have plenty of time to talk about this down the road, but it's just that it's not that. It reminds me of that quote from that Kirk says in Star Trek 2. He says, "Gallivanting around the galaxy is a game for the young, Doctor," when he's talking to McCoy, and it's not. I mean, I as a 9-10-year-old, I missed Barry, and I mean, I missed Professor Bergman being on the moon base. It's just, he was like the father figure. He was the voice of reason, and yeah. Anyway,
It gives it so much credence, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so credible. Not, and again, I don't mean to digress, but it's just when you touched upon that, it was a big loss to the show. So we're very fortunate to have him for these 24 stories. So I'll say that on a positive note.
And if anybody ever has access to or is interested in watching another performance by Barry that was virtually shot the first year, it's remarkable. It's an old Canadian series called The Star Lost, and Barry guest starred in a couple of episodes of it, and it's just it's remarkable how production value can affect every aspect right down to a person's performance, because yeah, I mean, the money that was sunk into space versus a lot of other productions at the time, like even Doctor Who,
Yep.
right? It's just there's no comparison for production value and making somebody feel like they're actually there, right? I mean, as opposed to standing in front of a cardboard set.
Yeah, true, very true. But we are actually about a few minutes over the hour, so I guess we should start to wind down. But no.
Can I just say that as we're ending with the final scenes, and this is true of every year one episode, is I feel when you get the final shot, then the end titles come crashing in. It's almost like amazing music, of course. It's almost like that's your adventure. That was it. It's a real mission statement. Genius of Barry Gray.
Yeah. Well said.
And I think this episode in particular, the last shot locks onto those flowers in Helena's hand, do they not?
Yes. Yeah, and there's an interesting too. We were talking about Professor Bergman. There's like a half a second of a scene. I shouldn't say a scene. A half a second where we see Professor Bergman after she makes the comment, and then we see him, and then it goes to the flowers. And it was interesting editing on that, on the part of the director there. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful. But yeah, no, listen, thank you both for today. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we sign off?
No, I'm good. But thank you, Warren, and thank you, Kit.
Thank you, Kit. This has been a really, really fun discussion. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you for having me. It's great to talk about space, and it's been great to talk about my favorite episode, and to see you guys again. Been great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kit.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Well, we'll sign off for today. Roy, how are we going to say goodbye to everybody this week?
I don't know. I think maybe we should just kind of do a lead in since we are going to be discussing the missing link next week, and just say until tomorrow.
Or we could question whether or not we've had any viewers so far this episode, and say, did they ever really exist?
Well, my response to that would be they did, in another time and in another place.
Awesome. Great. Okay, well, thanks so much, everybody out there. Thanks for tuning in and supporting the channel. And thanks again to our special guest, Kit Bevan, today. And we'll see everybody next week for Missing Link.
Thanks, Kit. Bye, everyone.
See you.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye-bye.